Hi, friends. So we're here to talk about. Can you read what I write? That's very important because yes, thank you, sir. Okay, so we're here to talk about test-driven development. I will be writing a lot in my comments as I go in the code itself. This talk is there for people that already practice it a little bit. So it's not a very good talk to be a very first introduction to test-driven development. So have you ever tried a little bit? Okay, that's good. Most people have. So I'll give you a very quick, 2 minutes intro to the people that have never had an intro, but it would not be enough, right? You kind of have to be there a little bit. So very small intro. We talk a lot about red, green refactor, which means from a lot of people in the beginning, the quick version is you do a test that fails, and then you try to make that test pass, and then you refactor. You think about this, right? And you're developing by creating the tests and following your tests. Basically, that's like the very smallest, quickest intro I can give, and is also not an intro at all. I just assume most of you have done a little bit, and I just go from there, okay? So what I want to cover today are things like why TDD, what is a test, like from a ontological, epistemological, and aesthetical point of view. And for that, we will code together, right? And we talk about why is that useful, right? And what is a test at all? What are we doing here, right? Trying some groundness in what we're doing. That's what I'm trying to do with you with this talk. We will talk about meiotics, like Socratic dialogue. This will come, don't worry. About aporia, about meditation, about being kind to yourself. Those are all connected to DDD, and try to make those connections with you along the way, right? And this presentation will contain typos. So, hi, I'm Romeu. I've been doing this for a lot of years. I would gladly discuss with you outside about this and code with you outside about this. We'll be doing a first part right now, which will be like coding something together very slowly. I'll do one kata, the most stupidest kata ever, and do this very slowly and try to talk about heuristics. And then a second session that is today at room 6 and 7, which goes from this into philosophy, basically, right? So let's do this. That's too much introduction. Let's code a little bit. So, have you ever done FizzBuzz? Okay, most of you, right? So for the few of you that have never done FizzBuzz, let's talk about it. It's the simplest exercise in TDD that we know of. There are videos where people solve it in 4 minutes. I will not be doing that. I'll be doing the extreme opposite. I'll be doing 1 hour of it, okay? It's a very simple exercise. I'll give you the whole rules for now, and I'll spoil the solution for you immediately, because the goal here is not to get that. So, FizzBuzz rules. If you have an input of 0, you should have an output that is a string containing 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, then 3 should be fizz, 4 should be 4. 5 should be buzz. And he won. So happens is 6 is fizz again. 7 is 7, 8 is 8, 9 is fizz again. 10 is buzz. So that's a very common introduction to DDD. I picked because it's a very common introduction to DDD exercise, right? It's like every multiple of 3 should return fizz. Every multiple of 5 should return buzz. Every multiple of 3 and 5 should return FizzBuzz. And everything else should return just the number in a string, basically. Yeah? I'll give you the answer right now. If you've never done a FizzBuzz, sorry, spoiler alert, the answer is module. It's just like using module to calculate this. We are not trying to find the answer. We're talking about design, we're talking about testing, we're talking about iterating and reflecting. I'm not interested in the FizzBuzz itself. Yeah? So let's do it. Let's do it very slowly. So I'll do a first test. Now, let's talk about my test, right? I'll call FizzBuzz. And I call it with a 0. And it should return 0. That's my first test. And it fails. Oh, what happens here? Why do I have? Oh yeah, sorry friends. I've been using the wrong characters for comments, right? That was another language. So there I have it fails, right? As I expected. Let's slow down with this. I have done a lot of things in that first test. So let's write them down. I'll try to communicate heuristics with you here. So first thing I did, I wrote down my understanding of the problem. That's the first thing I did. I'm not saying you should. I said I'm telling you how I do TDD, right? So there's a first lesson to you here, is that everybody does it in a way. Part of this is just personal preference. So I'm trying to justify why I do it, why it helps me. And you can pick and steal some ideas along the way, basically, right? So the first heuristics is I wrote down what was my understanding of the domain, the problem itself. Real quick comments about this. I keep referring to it afterwards. That's it, it helps me. I started a first test. You have observed maybe the name of my test. I use my favorite name for that test. It's called To Do Rename, right? I call it lazy naming. That's the name I give to this heuristic. What it means is I defer naming things a lot. Like I'm not naming it yet. I'm just like writing it. I actually don't even know if I'll keep the test. Maybe I will erase the test. Maybe it will never be named. I like defer naming. There are people that hate doing that. So not saying my way is the good way. It is. But I'm not saying my way is the good way. What I'm telling you is, for a lot of people, the way of thinking with TDD is, you should first understand, then write a good name, then write the test, right? Famously, there's a blog post by Sandro Mancuso where he says just that. First, I think a lot about naming, then I name, and then I wrote this down. That's not the way I do it at all. And I will explain in detail why later, but I defer naming. I just go for the assertions themselves, and I try to make the assertions themselves exist. And then I name that afterwards. And I'll take a lot of time to start naming. Most of my names are horrible names in the beginning, on purpose horrible names. I pick horrible names on purpose. Like, usually I go for to-do rename, basically. Like, I want a name that will bother me, right? I want the name to fail, because your awesome name will fail. That's the first heuristic here. Your awesome name will fail. And when it fails, the only thing the person reading your test have is your assertions. So I start by writing on that scenario. I have a name that failed, and I have assertions, and the person is just trying to understand what this code does by reading the assertions. Okay? That's my starting point. And then I do better. We will do better later. So I start by not naming. I start by doing an assertion. I do if my test fail, right? So a lot of people mix test-driven development with test first. I don't think red is per se just a test that I created first. It's the state of having a red bar in general. Could be because I erased code, could be for a lot of different reasons. But I'm trying to get a red bar. But I try to avoid the red bar that is a null pointer exception, which is what I have right now. So I usually go for comparing things that fail. Just look for error messages that I was expecting a value, I have another one or something like that. My test failed, but not all failings are equal. I prefer mismatched values over null pointer exceptions and things like that. That's me. I'm using Java just because, right? I have done this presentation with Clojure too and other stuff. It doesn't matter. I have to pick a language. So that's one thing I did before. Another thing is, and that's the biggest enemy, right? I am taking time. I will explain this one later, but I'll just note this down and we'll refer to it. So, wrote a test when went red, lazy naming. I write the first thing that makes it pass, right? So 0. Yay. It passes. So another heuristic, I make it pass in very dumb ways. Specifically, I am in good faith on the tests and in bad faith on the solution. Another thing I did in the very beginning is I started all tests and solutions in the same file. A lot of people call that TDD as you mean it. Is the name people give. I'm not saying it's a good name, it's just a very frequent name, right? It's a bad name. And the thing is, I started everything in the same file because deciding the behavior and deciding where we will put the code are two very different things. Right? I can always do extraction. I can always do renaming. Right? And hence, right now you should have a question here that should be like inside you. If you're not used to everything I'm doing, there's some questions that should be like bothering you right now. Things like, Romeu, are you not wasting a huge amount of time when you do that? It like seems like a lot of time wasting. Like you're writing stuff you know you throw away, you're writing in bad faith. You are writing things in places where you know you will not keep them. Right? This seems like a lot of like time wasting for nothing. You know you throw away that zero. You know you will not write FizzBuzz inside that test class, but if it remains in the test class in the end, it will not help you, right? Why are you doing this? Why are you wasting time? So we have a fight between the impression of speed versus speed. TDD, a central point of TDD is that fight. Impression of speed versus speed. Like, have you ever been in a go-kart? I'd see a go-kart. It feels so fast, right? Usain Bolt could probably outrun you by foot. I mean, not every go-kart driver, but you specifically, right? Like Usain Bolt could probably outrun you on a kart, but it feels fast, right? Have you ever been in an airplane crossing the Atlantic? It does not feel fast when you are inside. You are going at a normal speed. It does not feel fast. The sensation of speed and speed are two widely different things. We are addicted to the sensation of speed. Everything that feels slow, you don't want it. Everything that feels fast, you want it. Doesn't matter if it's really faster. My whole point today is to get you accepting this very difficult thing. Going faster means that we will feel slower, and that's hard and painful. Hi. So to go fast, we will go in methodically, and that feels slow. It feels very, very slow. So let's go through this. Let's like take that Band-Aid out of you right now. Your bottleneck is not writing. It is not. It cannot be. Your bottleneck, you are writing code. If you are trying to do TDD, you are writing code. If you're writing code, your bottleneck is not writing. I'll write that one down. Your bottleneck is not writing. If you're developing and you have somebody near you and that person is supposed to be developing and that person is writing like this, just by the sound of it, you know that person is not developing. They're probably just writing an email, playing an online game, something, chatting. I don't know, I don't care, but that's not the sound of somebody developing, right? It is not the sound of somebody developing because developing takes a lot of reading, a lot of thinking, a lot of pausing. The bottleneck is not driving speed, right? Here's another one for you. If you spend a whole week developing, a whole entire week developing, and then you lose everything and start again the next Monday, how much time will it take to write it the second time? Spoiler alert, it will be less than a week. It will. It may take half a day, maybe 2 days, depends. But like, it will be less than a week, a lot less. Because discovery is your bottleneck. Writing is not your bottleneck. So everything you can do in order to increase your speed of discovery is actually making you faster, right? Right? So drafts are your friends. By drafting, writing things that you throw away, if you are going faster in your discovery process, you are going faster overall. Do you agree on that? Are we good? Good. Which means that throwing away is not your enemy. I want you to remember that for the rest of the presentation. Trust me, throwing away is not your enemy. If you write a book and you force yourself to write every sentence in the exact way the printing will print, right? From the very beginning, no editing, no drafts, just final sayings, it will be a shitty book and will take like 20 years more to write. It is a very bad idea. Stop doing that in software, please. And so drafts are your friend. Right. Thank you. Slashes. Also, like, so drafts are your friend. You want them, right? So what am I doing? I'm doing what I call an Ariadne's thread. You know the myth of the Minotaur. Ariadne gave the hero a thread that he could use in the labyrinth, right? As I write things down, I'm putting knowledge into the environment. So the knowledge is not in your head. So not trying to hold everything in your head. You're writing things down, right? And the test can be that, right? You don't need just to produce the thing. Like, yes, the test will be your final product, but can also be your notes in the field while you go through the problem. And that's the center of this. You're using TDD to use your dev environment as your field notes as you go to the labyrinth of your problem itself. That's why I do lazy naming. I don't want to think a lot and then write. I want to write things that I have not understood completely yet. I want a field note guide. I want the thinkings that I had to be in the paper so they are not in my head. I liberate in space for other things. And you can tell me, I don't need that. I can totally hold out this in my head. First of all, no, you can't. You have a monkey that is trying to convince you that you can hold more in your head than you can. It is false. But also, even if you can, let's suppose you can, why are you doing that? Like, let's start being kinder on ourselves. Why try to juggle every information in your head all the time when you can liberate information and just keep with the most important stuff in your head? So, TDD is about keeping options open in your head. Okay? Okay, we're still in the first test here. I'll go back to this losing time thing later. So, we have FizzBuzz. Let's do a second test. I would say to do rename underscore. Also naming. There is no reason why this will not work, right? So, it fails, of course. So how do I make this pass? Like I say, bad faith all the way. It passes, right? I'm just answering the quickest thing that makes me, right? Quickest thing that makes me. And now I'll just like create a new test here. Parameterized test. I just like put these two together into a new test, right? They belong together to me. They seems to be the same thing. Double underscore. Just like copy this because I can. Like I just like putting parameters to my test in order to pass a lot of them. Why am I doing that? Let me explain to you. Oh, everything passes. I should try to have like a red thing or something. But everything passes because I'm not using this at all, actually. So everything passes, I should like try to make that not pass. Just like seeing this fail once. Right. So I did several things here. Let me slow down on them. First thing I did, I am mixing, I like smashing similar tests into a parameterized one. They are all talking about the same stuff, right? So I just like making them one single test. They are talking about the same stuff. Second, I will never name the first tests. They are being erased right now. Goodbye. Right? Never spend any second trying to think about what was their name because they are dead. Right? Third thing that happened here, right? I'm creating a different logic altogether. Right? I'm telling the person you are doing this, and I'm putting several different answers. If I only was doing a single test for each one of those, I would end up not creating like 5 tests because that's too much. But by doing parameterized testing and saying I can have 5 inputs, right? So now I'm changing what test means. What is a test? My first answer is like, first answer was like, testing is asking questions about the domain, basically, right? That's still true, but like V2 of the answer is testing is also helping archeology. The person that does not know my domain at all, when they get into the test, if the only test they have is 0 is 0, 1 is 1, that will not help that person a lot. And try to help the person understand. The person that does not have all the domain rules and go to my test trying to discover what I'm talking about. Of course, the names will help that person, right? Of course that will. But also names fail. I told that in the beginning, right? So I tried to help that person do archaeology. Spoiler alert, how many of you know all the domain rules of your code base? Right, nobody. Every time I asked this question, nobody raised their hand. Once one person raised, and I was like, how? And the person said, this is a new code base, new startup is the first week. I was like, okay, makes sense. But it is a very, very temporary situation to be. You don't know all the business rules of your code base, so you will be doing a lot of archaeology, right? So your test is trying to help archaeology, and for that to happen, more examples are not a bad thing. Probably a good thing. More examples help, right? You're trying to create patterns between them, so it's easier to have more examples. And so I went from trying to help with the assertions to also try to help with the examples. I have not started even naming yet. Yeah? So, once I have done that, right, I can go for another test. So let's do some fizzing. To do rename 3 underscores. Right. And I'll go for, we know we end up doing parameterized tests, so I'll just start doing that. I don't care, right? FizzBuzz of this should fizz. And of course, it does not, right? And let's make it pass. I mean, that's enough, right? Beautiful code. It makes it pass. Why am I writing awful code? Because it makes it pass, right? Like I said in the beginning, good faith in the tests, bad faith in the code itself, right? That's the heuristic I'm using, right? And so it's always possible to add a guard clause, just an if that makes my test pass. That's the fastest path towards all green, right? So let me give you an heuristic to that, right? A green bar is a permission to think. If you're having discussions between yourself and yourself, or yourself and your partners, and yourself in the world, I don't care. If you start having discussions or thinkings with a red bar, you're failing under this heuristic, right? You want the fastest green bar you can. It will be shit. It will be an if, don't care. Fastest green bar you can, right? Why? Because when you start doing smart stuff with a red bar, you start inviting chaos in your life, right? You always want to see the red bar. You always want to start with red, green, refactor. Always want to start with red first. Red first just means that you thought you were doing something will not work, and you saw that it did not work, because you don't want the confusion of it working when it was supposed to not work. And you also don't want the confusion to say, oh, that should be fine, and advancing on a red bar, right? And you say, okay, but that takes time. Actually, it doesn't. Like, what really takes time, is your when you're looking for stuff. What is the name of that? Hesitation. Your own hesitation is what takes time, right? If you walk in the streets and have two paths that are very similar to go where you want to go, and you start hesitating, oh, which one I should take? Maybe this one is like 10 meters less than this one. Overall, you're losing time, right? Go into green the fastest you can, right? When it becomes like mechanical, just muscle memory, it goes very quickly. Everything I'm doing right now, incredibly slowly, you could do in seconds. It goes very quickly. In the beginning of doing that is not very quick, but it can become a very, very quick behavior to have. And it saves you time on the long run. So I'm going for the quickest thing. I'm not thinking about design at all, right? Not thinking about design at all. I'm thinking about, have I documented a little bit, have done a little bit of Ariadne's thread about what is the problem, what is a first version of a solution, right? I'm creating that first living documentation of my problem to think about my problem with that in hand. That's my goal here. I'm just producing the quickest version I can of that. Separating concerns. Concerns. You try to separate the concern of understanding the problem itself versus the concern of solving the problem of how is the good design for the problem. Things like that, to separate those concerns. Separating those concerns because it's quicker to separate them than to do them all at the same time. I'll talk about this in the second part a lot more. So, just putting any answer here, and I put another one, and it will go red, and I'll make it pass in the most awesome way possible. Right. You love this, right? This is good code. And once it's green, I can go red again. And maybe some of you are starting to think, okay, the awful names are a thing, right? And the bad faith is a thing. But the problem with bad faith is that there is no limit to bad faith, right? I could go all day adding new parameters here and add a new if statements here, and we can go spend a long time just doing this, right? So, what do I do? Right. So, let's just go there. I'll just make it pass. Awesome code. Well, it passes. Now we can think. So there are many ways we can do here, and this specific tension, this tension of, okay, you're doing bad faith, at the risk of bad faith in the solution, right? I want to limit my bad faith, right? There are many heuristics to how do I limit my bad faith. All of them are good, except one. There is one heuristic that you should not use to limit your bad faith. It is gut feeling. Oh, it seems all right, right? Why gut feeling is bad? Methods, TDD is a method. Methods are there to help the fact that you are an ape that is very bad at doing repetitive small things and not add errors, right? That's why the World Health Organization has invested millions and millions just creating checklists for surgery, right? Checklists for surgery will not make you a good surgeon, but they will reduce errors. That's the point of them. That's the point of methods. Like, it's reducing variations, reduce errors. You're putting this on the method so you don't have to worry about it. You can free yourself from thinking about it. You just follow that method for that, and you use your mind for more important stuff. Yeah? So when you start having a gut feeling about should I limit bad faith or not, you are thinking about TDD. You should not be thinking about TDD when you do TDD. Well, in the beginning, yes, because you're learning. But then it should start becoming muscle memory. You want rules you can follow blindly so you can think about the design itself. You can use TDD to think about and not be thinking about TDD itself. Yeah? That's why you don't want gut feeling. It means you're thinking too much about something you should not be thinking about at all. Okay? So, many different rules. There is the transformation priority premise. You can look into the internet. I don't like it. You could use like property-based testing. I have a presentation about that I gave in DDD Europe another year to like say, I'll just like add properties to generate random numbers within this rule here and add almost all possible numbers as entry points to my parameter list and things like that. That's doable. That's another way to limit your bad faith is to not limit it like at all. For simplicity's sake, I usually go with the rule of 3, which means once I have 3 repetitions, I have to limit bad faith. Yeah? Rule of 3 is good because I can run towards it very quickly and just illustrate my problem space a lot with examples. I just did it. I'm in my 3rd one, so I do not have the right. By rule of 3, I do not have the right to go to 12. I have to think another solution here. So now I can think of it, right? And we all know it, right? You all know that the solution is that, right? And it will be red, because 0. Everybody saw that in the beginning? When I put the first 0, saw that I was doing that on purpose, things like that? So the red case is this one, right? And we need like an exception to that, and that's fine. 3D is like helping you like awesome code, right? Okay. So I'm going through this, and I'm creating a thing that makes not a lot of sense. I don't want people to like try to discover this afterwards, so like I'm just creating another method that could be extracting it or just like creating. And like X, just creating this, right? Calling the here is much path 3I. Like, it's not the most important part right now. Like, I could talk to you about right now about typos. Right, passes. That's good. It's just like extracting, right? So, what I'm doing here is creating another, by extraction, right? Creating, controlling granularity of steps. I start with very, very small steps. My minimum size of steps is the minimum size of thinking I can be doing here, right? If a step starts being too large, I have to reduce it. I'm playing about what is the size of a step, right? So if I'm doing TDD about this thing here I have to go one by one, but now, for the next one, for Buzz, I can just like go 3 by 3, right? I could like 5, 10, 50, underscores. It doesn't, none of them passes. I can make all of them, the 3 of them pass in a single action, right? My step is also by that. Can I do a single action that passes all the parameters? Can I do a single action that's the thing I'm playing with, right? Size of steps. That's another heuristic. And just going to make them all pass. And now we're starting to maybe think this is god awful, right? That this is really, really, really bad code. Maybe you want to think about this. And my answer is, you are red. You cannot think on red. Remember that. Now you're green. Now you can think, right? I'm just making it pass. I'm just making it pass. Making it pass. I'm trying to help you have just like muscle memory. Well, try to accelerate you by trying to make you not think about some stuff. Right? That's the hard part. Fighting against the ape inside your mind right now. Right? Not thinking about this. Do not think about the elephant in the room. That's why I'm going to this whole extent of writing awful code. There is part of you that is saying, you should have refactored this since the beginning. This is awful, right? That part is your enemy. You want to have a green bar. That's it. Just run to that green bar. Think about design as quickly as you can. So we have green. I can just do this. It's not that bad. Right? It's pretty legible code, actually. I'm not changing it. Anyway. And you can finish it. Let's finish it. And let's name it. Like a better name than underscores. A better name than underscores is like FizzBuzz. Well, everything passes, right? I have solved a first version. Another heuristic is you will not get, like, if your problem is like traveling salesman, you will not get Dijkstra's algorithm Dijkstra. Dijkstra's algorithm like that, right? You're just getting what comes from the first naive assumption. Oh, damn it. So this is end of part 1. There is a part 2. I will be renaming, and I'll also be doing a lot of philosophy with this, talking about meditation, talking about all that, etc., in part 2. It will be at room 6 and 7, apparently. Thank you very much, and ladies. not lazy.